Hello and welcome to the TMC Newsroom. Thanks for watching. My name is Rich Tarani, coming to you from San Jose, and on our program today is Chris King. He's the Director of Product Marketing at Palo Alto Networks. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Rich.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I was hoping we could talk a little bit about your company and what you're up to these days.
Absolutely, would love to.
So, stage is yours.
Thank you. Palo Alto Networks is a company in the network security space. In fact, we refer to ourselves as the network security company. We make a product that we call a next generation firewall. And basically, the raison d'etre of the company is that network security in the enterprise is getting more and more complicated and doing less and less. And if you kind of wind the clock back a little bit, the firewall was designed to be kind of the cornerstone of network security. The firewall is sitting in the right place to do network security. It defines the inside versus the outside. It sees all the traffic, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, the firewall, as a lot of enterprises know it, is pretty dumb. It knows ports and IP addresses. And if you look at the current crop of applications and the threats that target them, that's completely inadequate. Applications port hop, they're firewall friendly, they use port 80, they use encryption, they do all kinds of fun things to get through the firewall. And on the backs of those applications ride threats. And what we did is instead of, the industry's response to this problem was to sell companies more stuff. I'm going to sell you an intrusion prevention system, I'm going to sell you a URL filtering device, I'm going to sell you a proxy, so on and so forth. So you got this big mess, it's complicated, it's expensive, it's hard to manage, and you don't really have any idea of what the policy is. And so what we did is to build a firewall. We said, let's start over. The firewall is the right place to do a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
The problem is, the way to fix it is to make it smarter. So what we do is we actually identify the application inside the firewall, and by doing that, we can make decisions to say, let me look at that. That's Facebook, or that's WebEx, or that's BitTorrent. And I can look at the user of that, again, making the firewall smarter. I can take a look at the application, I can take a look at the user, and I can say, I'm going to allow the marketing people to use Facebook to market things, but I want to keep the rank and file, the shop floor folks, out of Facebook except during lunch hour or something to that effect. So I have a very positive control. It's all in the firewall, and the side benefit is I can simplify my network security infrastructure. I can get rid of potentially some of the other things that have been tacked on to the old dumb firewall because I now have a smarter firewall.
Now, traditionally, firewalls, many of them haven't tackled too much more than their original mission because of doing things at line speed and not slowing down networks excessively. Now, I know Moore's Law from, I mean, if you just look at the last 10 years and just a geometric increase in performance has been amazing and is obviously benefiting companies like yours, but traffic is also growing at perhaps greater rates than Moore's Law. So the question is, how are you dealing with the necessity to do what you do in the firewall, but allowing performance of the network to not degrade?
Great question. Perfect question.
I do this for a living.
Yeah, I can tell. This isn't your first rodeo. So the thing is, you're exactly right. The video, the rich media, the social networks, networks have gone from 100 meg to 1 gig to 10 gig.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. The way you deal with this is you start from scratch. We built a software architecture that takes traffic through one time. It's not a matter of, well, let's do firewalling and let's do IPS and let's do a whole bunch of other security operations serially. It doesn't scale. It wouldn't perform.
Right.
So to your point, the firewall is in the infrastructure. It's in line. If the firewall goes down, the network goes down. And so the design spec behind our next generation firewall was exactly that. It's designed to be in line. And so we had to figure out a way to make the box scale. And we did that first and foremost by smoothing the path on the software side. So we classify the traffic one time. We associate it with policy one time. We scan the content one time. That makes it a lot smoother than having serial sort of software silos.
There's a potential savings too, right?
Absolutely.
You're hitting it with a single appliance. You just have to have that appliance needs to be obviously
stout.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was going to say just extremely powerful.
It's extremely powerful. So I think the software piece is one piece. The second piece of it is the hardware side of it.
Okay.
So the hardware side of it, we split the data and the control plane. So the management side, they've got their own, it's its own plane.
Sure.
It's got its own processor, RAM, disk. On the data plane side of things, and you split that for a couple of reasons. One of them is pure performance. The other one is if the box is, you're hammering the box with a report, it still passes packets just fine.
Great.
Flip it over. If you're hammering the box with traffic, the UI is responsive. On the data plane side, the part that actually passes traffic, we have specialized processing centers for networking. So hardware accelerated NATing and routing and QoS and things like that. We have a specialized processor for security. So hardware accelerated encryption, decryption.
So these are not off-the-shelf Intel chips, or they are?
They're not off-the-shelf Intel chips. On the management side, it's an Intel chip. On the data plane side, it's a specialized networking chip. It's a specialized security chip, and it's a specialized content scanning chip. They're not ASICs, but they are purpose-built for the application that they sit in.
In some ways, this is kind of like the old model of having the multiple boxes, but you're putting them in a single box. They're communicating. They're sharing some of the things that they should be sharing, right? Reducing the total number of, I guess, power supplies that you would need in a traditional old, I guess, in a legacy system, right? I mean, there are a lot of benefits here.
There are a lot of benefits. Now, I'll take one exception to what you just said.
Okay.
What we've done here is rather than take the half a dozen boxes that comprise the security infrastructure in most enterprises and collapse it into one, we tore the page out and said, let's start over.
Okay.
If you were to do this today, forget the legacy of the last 10 or 15 years of port-based firewalls and all this good stuff, what would you do? You would make policy saying, I want this user to have access to that application,
right,
and this is the kind of content I want to go between them.
Right.
And so if you can write firewall policy that way, which is what we do, we can say, you know, I want salespeople to use WebEx, but not the desktop sharing feature.
Right.
That kind of thing. Then what happens is you don't replace the traditional functions, you eliminate the need for some of them. And it's not to say that every one of our 1,500 customers is necessarily ripping out all their security and replacing it with us. It's to say that they have the luxury of being able to rationalize some of those legacy investments.
That's awesome. So we've got about 30 seconds. What's next?
So the next thing that we're doing really is what we've seen from customers is they love the visibility, they love the control. And it creates this sharp contrast because if they've got users inside the organization with this level of visibility and control, when I leave and I go to a hotel or I go to a Starbucks or I go to a customer site, all of a sudden, before I had no control over anybody. Now I've got all this control over people inside. What about when they leave? And that's, you know, one of the things that we announced just recently, in fact, was an initiative that we're calling Global Protect that takes that same degree of control and pushes it out to remote.
And they just have to be over VPN to access this, or how does it work?
Exactly. So what we're doing is we're bringing the traffic back through us.
Okay.
And we do this in a scalable, distributed manner.
Okay.
So you don't have this problem of, okay, I got to haul all the traffic back to some centralized gateway, and then my performance is terrible.
Sure.
We do it in a distributed fashion, so the client is going to know, hey, that's the closest gateway. I'll send my traffic through there, and then I get the same degree of visibility and control and policy that I get if I'm inside the headquarters or in a branch office, even when I'm on the road.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me in.
And good luck. Hopefully we'll see you on again soon.
Would love it.